Throughout the course of your life, have you ever thought to yourself, I wonder what Kabutops has been up to in Generation 1 Overused? No, you haven't. Update, so Kabutops is unranked now, so the chances of you thinking that are actually much higher than what I was expecting. See, I had this video idea drafted for a really long while, and the rankings dropped while I was still finalizing the script, and Kabutops dropped, and that made me filled with unfathomable rage and many unanswered questions, like why the heck is victreebel ranked? And don't you dare say because it's a mini victreebel. Everybody knows Dragonair is the best rapper in OU. If you think otherwise, you're not fun. As one of the many sword stance sweepers in the tier, Kabutops manages to possess both indispensable and absolutely expendable traits that not only give it an identity in RBYOU compared to the rest of the tier's sword sweepers, but also make Kabutops a force to be reckoned with in the proper situations. I absolutely will not deny that it's not the best sword stance user, but it still has various niches that allow it to fit on specific team compositions much better than, say, similar fringe picks with sword stance, such as Lickitung and victreebel. Also, I'm talking about Kabutops today because I like it. It's a cool Pokemon, get over it. As one might expect from that moderately meaty attack stat and insanely tiny move pool, this Pokemon's only purpose in life is to click Sword Stance 3 times and then click Hyper Beam 3 or more times, emphasis on attempt, because in reality, getting a sweep going on with this is much harder. The main problem with Kabutops is pretty obvious if you actually build a team with it, go onto ladder, and play some games. Kabutops' typing is so absolutely ridiculous it automatically grants almost a whole tier the right to switch in while it sets up, instantly causing all of Kabutops' setup to be completely wasted. Even Rhydon, who's OHKO'd by an unboosted Surf, doesn't necessarily care about Kabutops, since they can be used to not only bait Kabutops into using Surf over to boosted Hyper Beam and switching to Gengar or Starmie or Tauros or Zapdos or Chansey or Jolteon or I don't know, but even then, it can still deal ridiculous damage on the switch via Earthquake, making Kabutops not appreciate setting up on a Rhydon. The combination grants you resistances to two of the most common offensive types in the metagame, but in return, you're weak to the two most common offensive types in the metagame. Plus, it makes you unable to touch grass, which really sucks into the victreebel matchup. Damage-wise, Kabutops does not enjoy either of its weaknesses since they're so common in OU. Tauros has the ability to 3-hit KO with Earthquake, Rhydon can 2-hit KO, and worst of all, Zapdos has a 60% chance to instantly KO Kabutops with a lone Thunderbolt. Also, victreebel's Razor Leaf is an OHKO, but this is victreebel, so... Another thing about the whole entire team switches into Kabutops for free thing I mentioned earlier is that almost every Kabutops counter happens to outspeed. Zapdos outspeeds, Jolteon outspeeds, Tauros outspeeds, Starmie outspeeds it, Gengar outspeeds, and all of these huge threats threaten huge numbers with Thunderbolt and Earthquake, which I brought up earlier, and this is just not really good, because Kabutops can't deal much numbers in response unless it's set up, and that's suggesting Kabutops managed to survive the hits. Now remember Gengar outspeeding and stuff. When Gengar enters the field, Kabutops has 3 possible choices. A. Surf. B. Switch out. Or C. Set up Sword Stance because you know you're gonna die here. Because unless Gengar decides to run only Nightshade as the attacking move of choice, Kabutops has no way of winning the matchup. Wait, so actually I did some calculations, and Boltless, Drainless, Psychicless Gengar manages to win the matchup with only Nightshade. This is very sad. This is very sad for us Kabutops fans. Because of Gengar's Ghost type, above average base 130 special, and access to the funny electric move which it almost always runs, Gengar is the biggest counter in the tier, and Kabutops can do literally nothing on a healthy Gengar. Now, I think that's enough unnecessary yapping about Thunderbolt users and how they impact Kabutops. So far, this video's been surprisingly negative, huh? Well, trust me, the rest of this video is gonna be all happy, non-depressing, totally encouraging messages. Trust me. Kabutops has a lot of pretty good matchups, namely Cloyster and a very specific Chansey set. Cloyster will never be OHKO'd by Kabutops' Hyper Beam, but it really doesn't need to. Cloyster's outsped, and no move run by a typical Cloyster will deal enough damage to Kabutops to do anything worthwhile, with Explosion being only a 3-hit and Blizzard being resisted for pitiful damage. With this valuable ice resist, Kabutops may freely set up on Cloyster when necessary, and then kill with a Hyper Beam after one slash or Body Slam. Non-Bolt Chansey sets also pose very little threat to Kabutops, being nothing but setup fodder, although Kabutops will still have to watch out for paralysis. Ice Beam does only around 16%, meaning Kabutops may freely set up its Sword Stance in the presence of these Chanseys, and then immediately pose a threat to whatever switches in unless they're named Rhydon or Gengar. Snorlax is also a fair choice for setting up on. Not only do you outspeed it, which is great, but you resist Body Slam, Snorlax's primary stab of choice, and you also resist Ice Beam, which Snorlax happens to run every so often. However, the main problem with setting up against Snorlax is that much like Starmie, Snorlax was made with Game Freak's blessing. Thus, I have a physical inability to determine what set it's running from first glance until I scout at least once per match for every single special move in the game. This risks a lot. But if one does manage to confirm a lack of Earthquake or Thunderbolt on Snorlax, then congrats, you've found a setup opportunity, I guess. Let's talk about movesets for a second. Kabutops has a really tiny move pool, very obviously because this is a water type from Generation 1. It's nowhere as tiny as the move pools given to, say, the Pidgeot line, but it's the same idea. If anything, the devs gave Kabutops mercy by giving it access to moves it would actually want to use, and Hydro Pump, I guess. Obviously, Kabutops needs Sword Stance, that's like mandatory on every set, and it also needs Hyper Beam if it wants to make progress in the game. Now the last two slots are pretty odd ones. The standard set on the Smogon Dex uses Surf and Slash, and while I agree Surf works due to allowing you to actually stand a chance versus Rhydon, Slash is a pretty good option too, because of its crit properties, but it could be easily changeable, at least in my opinion, for Body Slam. While it loses out on breaking through Reflect, after one Sword Stance, Body Slam will deal even more damage than Slash can do at all, and has the added bonus of being able to paralyze enemies, allowing Body Slam to allow Kabutops to threaten most switch-ins with paralysis. Alternatively, if you hate yourself, you can instead use Seismic Toss over Slash. What does it do exactly? It does slightly more damage on Gengar than Surf. Not by much though, you're still losing a matchup versus Gengar if it carries something that isn't Lick. And finally, the last alternative move I'd say would be actually kind of decent on a Pokemon like this is Blizzard. And using Blizzard allows Kabutops to threaten Rhydon, much like Surf, but unlike Surf, it also allows you to threaten Zapdos, Exeggutor, victreebel, and Dragonite. This doesn't mean it's necessarily strong, though. Kabutops has 70 special. This is the same special as Tauros. And Tauros isn't necessarily amazing at dishing out blizzards. Anyways, yeah, Kabutops is garbage, but it's a cool type of garbage, like, I don't know, Sludge. It's the 65 base power signature move of the Pokemon Muck, which is a cool type of garbage because it's the strongest poison move in RBY, and it's the only thing that can threaten moderately decent damage on Exeggutor.